It will soon be midnight at Kensington Palace in downtown London, where Diana, Princess of Wales, lived after her divorce from Prince Charles a year ago. People have been gathering there throughout the day, and they are still gathering to pay their respects and to talk with one another about one of the world's most glamorous women, Diana, Princess of Wales.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight, Sunday. Here's Peter Jennings.
Good evening. The body of Diana, the Princess of Wales, is back in Britain tonight at a private funeral home, and Buckingham Palace is expected to announce funeral plans tomorrow. Diana and her friend Dodi Al Fayed, as you have undoubtedly heard, were killed last night when their car, going very, very fast, crashed in a Paris tunnel. At the time, they were being followed by photographers, and there is no doubt that today, in many different countries, many people blame the media for Diana's death. Diana's body was returned to Britain today by the Royal Air Force, accompanied by the Prince of Wales and her two sisters. They were met by an honor guard of the Royal Air Force. Diana's coffin was covered in the Royal Standard, the Queen's flag. This taken as a very public display of the Queen's sympathy. There was no ceremony, but the new British Prime Minister Tony Blair was there to extend the government's sympathy to the Prince of Wales. In Scotland, where the royal family spends the summer, Charles and Diana's two sons, William and Harry, were driven to church services with their grandmother, Queen Elizabeth. Throughout Britain, there was universal shock. Diana's reputation ebbed and flowed with public opinion, but she had long ago come to represent the most approachable and open member of the royal establishment. Prince Charles did not accompany his ex-wife's body beyond the airfield outside London. He flew back to Scotland to rejoin his sons. He's the one who told them the news. Diana lost the title Her Royal Highness when she was divorced, but her standing with the British public at this point in her life was very high. ABC's Mike Lee is in London tonight. He's been at Kensington Palace all day, and you've heard a great variety of reactions, haven't you, Mike?
Absolutely, Peter. Everything from stunned disbelief to, as you mentioned earlier, anger toward the media. In fact, just in front of me, we've had at least one window broken in a television van this evening, and so there have been isolated incidents of at least aggravation. Behind me, at any given moment, there are a couple of thousand people up there paying their respects. It began as a trickle at dawn this morning. Now, many, many hours later, it's turned into a non-stop pilgrimage. Throughout the day in London, Diana's public came to mourn, one by one, flower by flower, at this palace where she lived. At the main gate, where the princess had so often been seen driving her sports car to and from a local gym, an unending stream of people who wanted to leave something of themselves, a secret thought, a personal possession, a tear, a prayer. Most seemed caught up in their own private grief for a woman they had never met, yet missed intensely the moment she was killed.
Devastating. She didn't deserve to die.
Children brought their precious gifts. Others wrote private messages on cards. As the day wore on, the flowers grew into a monument, the crowds pausing longer as if Diana herself were here. British Prime Minister Tony Blair choking back his emotions.
We are today a nation in Britain in a state of shock, in mourning, in grief that is so deeply painful for us.
Flags flew at half-mast. At Buckingham Palace, the Prince of Wales' own regiment trooped the color, as usual, but today played a composition by Elgar, music usually reserved for fallen heroes. Mike Lee, ABC News, London.
Princess Diana and her companion Dodi Al Fayed had been seen in Paris earlier yesterday by photographers. They had a fairly public dinner at a hotel. ABC News has learned that when they left the hotel, they'd asked for a faster car. We asked ABC's Jim Wooten, who's been covering this story in Paris, to put together a timeline of those final hours.
After dinner at the Ritz Hotel, the couple left just past midnight in a chauffeured Mercedes, and with photographers in pursuit on motorcycles, the car hurtled into this tunnel by the River Seine. A cab driver estimated its speed at more than 100 miles per hour, and completely out of control, it skidded first to the right, struck the wall, then caromed and rolled head-on into the 13th pillar of the tunnel. It was 12:15. The impact was so violent, one eyewitness thought it was an explosion. He sprinted immediately into the tunnel and saw one of the photographers shooting pictures of the mangled interior of the Mercedes. The driver was instantly killed. Diana's bodyguard was critically injured, and in the rear seat, Mr. Fayed was also dead. But Diana was still alive, and for more than an hour, rescue workers struggled to free her from the wreckage. She was revived at the scene and rushed to this nearby hospital. But after nearly 3 hours of emergency measures, including open heart massage, at 4 a.m., Diana was declared dead. And as the French Interior Minister was announcing a criminal inquiry into the crash, police at the scene were impounding the motorcycles belonging to the 7 photographers, 6 of them French. All were taken into custody. 5:30 p.m., Diana's coffin, draped in the Queen's flag, is removed from the hospital. 7 o'clock, 19 hours since the Mercedes sped away from the Ritz. Diana, Princess of Wales, is headed home.
Jim Wooten is still with us in Paris, and Mike Lee is also still with us in London. Jim, in Paris, a question for you, first of all. Do we know what's going to become of these photographers who are being held? And talk for just a second about the sort of French passion for British royalty.
Well, there is a passion here. The French are accustomed to royalty. Their revolution put an end to that many years ago. But they've always had a good feeling toward British royalty, and that was expressed today all over this city. There was also a good deal of anger expressed toward the cameramen. 6 of them are still in custody, I believe, tonight, and they can be held indefinitely for questioning in this matter. It is a law in France that it is against the law in France to leave the scene of an accident without giving aid to those who may be injured. And the police are saying tonight that at least 4 of these photographers may be liable to charges such as that.
Okay, Jim Wooten in Paris, thanks very much. And a quick question for Mike Lee in London. Mike, I gather there's considerable pressure on the royal family to have a very, very important funeral.
I think anybody connected with the royal family or any politician would be foolish to ignore the incredible outpouring of emotion here. This nation wants a very big funeral. They want to be part of it.
Okay, Mike Lee in London. Both during her marriage and since, Diana has been a very public advocate for various public causes, including the fight against AIDS and most recently, as we've seen in the United States, landmines. One of the people who's had an influence on Diana is Baroness Margaret Jay, a journalist in her earlier career. And earlier today, I spoke with the Baroness, who was the former director of the British National AIDS Trust. Are you in any way surprised at the reaction in Britain today?
No, I'm not. I think she was, it's a hackneyed word, but I think she was an icon. I think an awful lot of people did see her as a genuine idol, as somebody who they could genuinely admire.
Why do you think she was so special?
She was wonderful at communicating with fellow human beings. If you saw her sitting on a hospital bed or kneeling on the floor next to a primary school child, or indeed just holding someone's hand who was in bad circumstances of whatever kind, you know, dying or perhaps homeless or miserable in some way or another, she had that power to communicate.
I remember the time she was regarded as the first sort of public person to shake hands or even touch someone with AIDS. Was that a difficult moment for her?
I think it was difficult, and I remember a great deal of to and fro with Buckingham Palace about whether she would wear gloves when she shook this person's hand when she came to the hospital. And of course, being Princess Diana, she said she certainly wasn't going to shake hands wearing gloves, and that picture went round the world and I think did more than thousands of words, and certainly much more than a lot of government messages, to make people feel that this was something they could deal with.
Margaret, thank you very much. Baroness Margaret Jay. We'll have more on the life and death of Princess Diana when World News Tonight Sunday continues, including reaction to her death here, of course, but also around the world. It's been universal.
This is World News Tonight, Sunday, brought to you by Nature Made Vitamins.
Diana's first official appearance as a member of the British royal family was at the funeral of another princess, Grace of Monaco, who also died in a car accident. Prince Charles apparently didn't want Diana to attend. Diana went to the Queen, who overruled her son. Princess Diana continued to travel extensively around the world, and in later years we have all seen her traveling frequently on behalf of people who were suffering. And so, as we said, there's been a universal reaction. ABC's Bill Rediker reports tonight on how people have reacted to her death outside of Britain.
At the British Embassy in Washington and at British consulates nationwide, people who never knew the princess offered tokens of remembrance, words of affection.
I think it's an awful tragedy. She was a princess of the people, and everybody seemed to love her.
For millions of Americans, Diana never lost her enormous appeal. Even after her divorce, she was welcomed in the United States. Today, President Clinton offered the nation's and his own condolences.
I'll always be glad that I knew the princess, and always think of her in very strong and positive terms.
While Americans were charmed by Diana and the mystique of royalty, it was her good works that are being remembered worldwide. In India, where she championed the rights of the poor, Mother Teresa said she was deeply shocked.
Tomorrow we shall pray for her, that she had great love for the poor.
In the former Yugoslavia and in Africa, where she went to highlight a campaign against landmines, Diana was hailed as an emissary of goodwill.
She was undoubtedly one of the best ambassadors of Great Britain.
But the most moving tributes came from the street. Clearly, Princess Diana had touched many in life and now in death.
She was a beautiful woman.
Yeah,
you know,
she just wanted to be left
chance.
alone.
It was like a fairy tale gone bad. You know, everybody wanted her to have a very happy ending, but it didn't have a happy ending at all.
Bill Redeker, ABC News, New York.
There is, as we've suggested already, considerable anger tonight on the controversial tactics of paparazzi photographers, not to mention the media in general. We'll have two reports when World News Tonight Sunday returns. Diana's younger brother, Charles Spencer, who's had his own troubles with the press, reacted quite angrily today, fairly obviously perhaps, to the news of his sister's death.
It would appear that every proprietor and editor of every publication that has paid for intrusive and exploitative photographs of her, encouraging greedy and ruthless individuals to risk everything in pursuit of Diana's image, has blood on his hands today.
Charles Spencer spoke from his home in Cape Town, South Africa, where he is now living most of the time. Paparazzi, by the way, take their name from a character in the Fellini movie La Dolce Vita named Paparazzo. He was based on a real photographer, Tazio Secchiaroli, who was one of the first photographers to chase celebrities and take their pictures. In an interview today, Secchiaroli criticized his profession, saying that the limits of good taste have disappeared. We asked ABC's Richard Gisbert to produce this report on the paparazzi.
Britain's sadness is tinged with anger, even a little guilt. The angry ones are blaming the media for their constant pursuit of the princess.
They should mind their own business. I tell you, it's the last time I ever buy a newspaper. Absolutely.
There is nothing in the United States to compare with Britain's sensationalist tabloid press. 5 papers with a total circulation of 10.5 million. All the British papers considered anything about Diana news, but the tabloids, with their insatiable appetite for scandal, hounded her relentlessly.
I understood the media might be interested in what I did, but I was not aware of how overwhelming that attention would become.
Princess Diana didn't always run from the cameras. Not only did she learn to court the press, but over time, she proved to be a deft manipulator of the media.
Whether it was the public causes she adopted, the landmines issue, for instance, or the personal battles, such as her propaganda war with the royal family, the media was Diana's weapon of choice.
She wanted attention, but she wanted it on her terms. Sadly, there is the other side to the coin, which is that people tend to abuse those terms.
With photographers pursuing Diana right up to her final moments, some Britons now want tough new laws to govern the press. But others believe the public is culpable.
So easy to blame the media or the press or whatever, but, you know, those press were after the blood that we buy the newspapers for.
Today there's a whole new load of newspapers being reprinted with the same new stuff on there. What are people doing? They're going out and feeding off it.
And as long as people have a taste for sensationalism and a lust for scandal, no celebrity will be immune. Richard Gisbert, ABC News, London.
The paparazzi, as you surely know, are a worldwide phenomenon, and clashes between these photographers and the celebrities they cover are common, if rarely this tragic. Generally, they are followed by a call for new laws restricting press coverage in some way, and today was no exception. Here's ABC's Jane Clayson.
In Hollywood, they're called paparazzi, and they'll do anything to get the shot.
I've seen my mother thrown to the ground by these animals.
Security experts say what the paparazzi do is frustrating, but not illegal.
We're talking about behavior that if anyone did it who didn't have a camera in their hand, it would be illegal. It would be peeping Tom offenses, trespassing, harassment, or stalking.
I want you taking pictures of my child, all right?
Legal, but an increasing annoyance to stars who are starting to fight back.
You just broke my camera.
After last night's crash, an angry Tom Cruise called CNN.
You don't know what it's like being chased by them. It is harassment under the guise of we are the press, we are entitled, and when people are having a private moment, they should be allowed to have a private moment.
Last year, actor George Clooney started a crusade against the paparazzi, boycotting the tabloid TV show Hard Copy and all other shows produced by Paramount Studios. Backed by a small army of angry celebrities, Clooney eventually got Paramount to promise that it wouldn't solicit, purchase, or air paparazzi video. It seems now even the largest tabloid in the country, the National Enquirer, is willing to draw the line.
We've been offered pictures of Princess Diana and Dodi Al Fayed in the car that crashed inside the tunnel. Those pictures are on the world market. We have refused to buy those pictures.
But other magazines may. The market value of celebrity photographs has skyrocketed, and it's no surprise in the last 10 years in this country, the number of paparazzi has doubled. Jane Clayson, ABC News, Hollywood.
It's a debate which pertains to all of us, and it will continue. We'll be back in just a moment. There was, of course, other news today, but it was certainly overshadowed by the Diana story. In some of the other news, the FBI says that some $22 million is still missing from the biggest armored car robbery in U.S. history. The suspect in that robbery, Philip Noel Johnson, was carrying just $10,000 when he was arrested yesterday at the Mexican border. And overseas in Algeria, the head of that nation's banned Islamic party has called for an end to the bloodshed. It has reached a fever pitch in recent days. As many as 360 villagers were massacred on Thursday, apparently by Islamic extremists. On the subject of Diana, again, a service was held in a London mosque today for Dodi Al Fayed, Diana's friend, who died in last night's accident. His body was returned to London today, draped much like her coffin was, though in this case in a flag covered in Quranic writings. He was a Muslim, and the ceremony, he was an Egyptian, as was his father. The ceremony was held in the biggest mosque in London in Regent's Park. In this picture, the world had its latest clue to Diana's future, the princess and the playboy. Dodi Al Fayed was the eldest son of self-made Egyptian billionaire Mohammed Al Fayed, who owns, among other things, the famous British department store Harrods. The young Al Fayed, who was 41, had been a familiar figure on the international jet set and had been linked with numerous beautiful women. No sooner did his relationship with Diana become public than an American model, Kelly Fisher, sued him for breach of contract, claiming that she had given up her career for him only to be dumped for Diana. Al Fayed was involved in producing movies and had money invested in Chariots of Fire and The World According to Garp. This relationship with the princess came to light in the proverbial way when these photographs were splashed across the British tabloids only a few weeks ago. And we'll continue with this in just a minute. Finally from us this evening, Diana, then and now. Here's ABC's Beth Nissen.
She was appealing from the start. Her shy youth, her innocence. She let 20th century people believe in 18th century fairy tales. A sweet maiden could marry a prince and ride in a gilded carriage to a palace life. A life soon crowned by the births of two cherished sons, heirs to the throne.
Here was a fairy story that everybody wanted to work. I desperately wanted to work. I desperately loved my husband, and I wanted to share everything together. And I thought that we were a very good team.
But fairy tales are often full of misfortune and dark forces. This princess struggled with isolation, suicidal depressions, the eating disorder bulimia. She grew thin and pale. She grew apart from her husband. Problems she addressed in a rare and candid 1995 interview, not authorized by the palace. An interview that won her considerable public sympathy.
Because I was the one who was always pitched out front, whether it's my clothes, what I said, what my hair was doing, everything.
Especially her romantic life after Charles, a short series of attachments to men who were frightened off by the intense media interest in Diana or who turned a personal profit from it. Diana was publicly embarrassed, hurt, betrayed, and resilient.
You know, people think that at the end of the day, a man is the only answer. Actually, a fulfilling job is better for me.
Diana successfully changed her job over the years, from a kind of royal mannequin to a kind and noble social worker. She used her celebrity to bring new focus to the plight of the world's homeless and poor and sick. She reached out to those maimed by landmines, those wasted by AIDS.
Someone's got to go out there and love people and show it.
After her divorce from Charles last year, Princess Diana lost the right to be called Her Royal Highness. But for many, the way the princess showed and handled her common flaws and common problems made her, in the end, most regal. Beth Nissen, ABC News, New York.
And that is World News Tonight for this Sunday. The interest in Diana is such that tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern, we'll have a 2-hour special called Diana, Princess of Wales, The Royal Tragedy. I will be joined by Barbara Walters and Diane Sawyer, who knew her and who covered her. I hope you'll join us. I'm Peter Jennings. Good evening.